Hey everyone! Hey everyone! Welcome! We have officially gone live. Thank you for your patience while we got connected here. We're actually getting started for our Jaguar Heartbeats. Got my music playing. I don't know if y'all can hear that. Hey Jackie! So glad to have you guys here. Come on in, get settled. The Student Counseling Center at A&M San Antonio. We actually figured with Valentine's Day around the corner, what better time to spend some time talking about healthy relationships and self-love. So come on in. Welcome, welcome. So happy to have you all here. For those that just joined, we are getting set up to go live. Welcome to Jag Heartbeats. Valentine's Day is around the corner, and no matter how you're celebrating Valentine's Day, we want for everyone to realize that there is a lot of power in being able to have a healthy perspective on relationships. So we're here hoping to give some good information on healthy relationships and self-love. Okay, I think that we are able to get started here. I'm going to turn my music down. I was kind of jamming out a little bit. Okay. Anyways, so first and foremost, again, for those that just joined, it's good to have you all here. We're so glad that you took some time to join us and join in on the conversations about healthy relationships. The Student Counseling Center is putting this on, just hoping that it'll help to enrich those that find themselves reflecting about healthy relationships, relationships in general right now in the middle of this pandemic, and how to have healthy relationships. And so we're glad to have you here. Before we get started, I do want to just let everyone know that this actually is meant to be a learning community where we're going to be talking about healthy relationships and hopefully having some really real discussions about healthy relationships. But because it's a learning community, we cannot necessarily guarantee confidentiality or privacy. Okay, and so the Student Counseling Center, obviously we want for you guys to be reflecting about this information, and hopefully you'll hear something that really does resonate with you. But just know that we cannot necessarily guarantee privacy. And if you are interested in speaking to someone in a more private, confidential space, then please don't hesitate to contact our office for those that are currently enrolled students at A&M San Antonio. Feel free to contact our office because we definitely want to be supportive to you, especially if something that we say today, if it really resonates. Okay? Okay. All right. Well, I think that we can get started with some trivia. Yes?
Yeah. So those of us who are joining us today, we're going to have a few fun facts, a few trivia to see if y'all can guess a few of the fun facts about Valentine's Day. So those of you who'd like to guess, what mythology or religious belief mythology does Cupid originate from?
And feel free to comment in the comment section there if you know the answer to that.
Or if you just want to take a guess.
It was what?
What is Cupid's mythological roots?
Not sure if we have any responses there.
That's okay. So, Cupid actually has its roots in Greek mythology. So he dates back all the way to 700 BC to the Greek god by the name of the god of love, Eros, who was actually this handsome, immortal man with intimidating power to make people fall in love.
We got some requests for multiple choice.
Okay, I could throw some curveballs in there.
Yes, a different level here of trivia.
So, can y'all guess the first when the first Valentine was sent? Was it in the 1800s, the 1300s, or the 15? You know.
Any ideas?
Any guesses?
And the options were 1300s,
The 1500s, or the
1800s. I'm going to actually, oh, we've got a guess here. 1500s, Joshua. I was actually about to guess. Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's correct.
I was going to guess wrong. Awesome.
Yeah,
yes.
the very first Valentine was sent in the 15th century. So, I mean, technically the 1400s, but I'm very bad with counting. But it was a gentleman named Charles, written by a French medieval duke named Charles to his wife, penned this sweet note to his lover while he was imprisoned in the Tower of London when he was just 21 years old. And one of the lines in the poem was, "I'm already sick of love, my very gentle Valentine."
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Gosh, I didn't know I was actually going to say a different date. So congratulations to you, Joshua, 21 PG, for getting that right. Nice.
Yes. So the next trivia is, in what year or what century did the tradition of giving flowers begin? In the 20th century, the 18th century, or the 17th century?
I feel like it probably was 20th.
No. Nope, it wasn't the 20th century.
Oh, man. Well, I've already eliminated one option. What were the other two?
The 18th century or the 17th century?
Once again, we've got a guess. Joshua, 21, VG, of 18?
No, it was the 17th century.
17.
Yes. It can be traced back all the way back to when King Charles II of Sweden learned the language of flowers, which pairs different flowers with specific meanings, and on a trip to Persia and subsequently introduced the tradition to Europe. The act of giving flowers then became a popular trend during the Victorian era, including on Valentine's Day, with red roses symbolizing deep love.
Oh, nice.
Right? Isn't that cute?
Sounds good. Congratulations once again to all those that tried at least. Okay, well, I think that with the time that we have here today, we can go ahead and move into some of the questions. So just to kind of let everyone know a little bit of how this goes, we actually have already received a couple of topics that appear to be weighing on people's minds or on their hearts, which we've called heartbeats, so to speak. And so Jackie is actually going to be kind of feeding me those heartbeats and what those questions have been thus far. But, you know, if you have a question about something, then please, you're welcome to use the comment feature if you want to type something in. if something pops into your head, or if you have a heartbeat that you want to be addressed. And hopefully we can do as many topics, because there were a lot of heartbeats that people were wanting to. Oh, got a little shout out there. Thank you. We love you as well. Showing some love. Getting ready for Valentine's Day. Appreciate that. Okay, so let's get started. What is the first heartbeat that we have?
Yes, our first heartbeat, Catherine. The question that a lot of our students wanted to know are, what are characteristics of a healthy relationship?
Okay, that's a good heartbeat. So some of the characteristics of healthy relationships, and by the way, this is actually like rooted in research. Some of the common things that we see that healthy relationships include are trust, effective communication, safety, healthy boundaries, essentially respecting one another. Some other ingredients. Essentially, in a healthy relationship, you can think of it as individuals are safe, and they can safely, navigate that relationship. Healthy relationships are, we're able to feel empowered, right? When we're in healthy relationships, you can think of it as they build us up. They build us up. Healthy relationships, they create a space to where it's adding to us rather than taking away from us. Okay, so again, if you think about all those characteristics that I just mentioned, trust, respect, safety, okay, and keep in mind when I say safety, I mean physical safety, psychological safety, sexual safety. All of that is included when I'm talking about safety. So those are things that help supplement our lives. They add to us. And those are just some of the common ingredients to healthy relationships. Research actually shows, by the way, that healthy relationships can help us to feel a greater sense of purpose, in life. Okay, so that's one reason why they're so valuable. Excellent question.
Our next question for you is, what are subtle signs of unhealthy boundaries in relationships and friendships?
Subtle signs of unhealthy boundaries, okay, in relationships and friendships. So first off, boundaries, what are those, right? So when we think about boundaries, we're really talking about limits, what we will allow and where we draw the line. Okay, so when you're thinking about your limits, some subtle signs, I would say, could be signs that maybe those limits are being crossed or potentially violated in some way. Okay, so kind of, breaking it down, I'm thinking about, let's say that maybe you have requested space. Maybe you've requested space, and maybe you have friends that are, kind of constantly invading that space. I'm kind of thinking about situations that might really feel like the individual is kind of like their boundary is being crossed. And especially what I'm specifically thinking about is the subtlety behind it. It might not necessarily feel like it's major, right? Sometimes I think that we think about some of these explicit things, Um, but if you have someone that, I've heard of individuals that maybe feel like their privacy is not respected, um, or they've made a request and it's been, it's basically, you find yourself kind of advocating for yourself and making these requests to your friends or to your partner even. And it doesn't feel like it's being validated. Potentially it might even be explicitly invalidated. So those are some of the things that I'm thinking as far as the subtleties, the things that might not necessarily be in your face, but that over time they feel like they add up, and you start to feel the impact of someone kind of, slowly but surely crossing that line.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And so it makes me think of those situations in which you're not sure of something happening and you ask like, hey, I think this is a boundary issue. And they're like, no, that's not what I meant. But it's a repeated pattern, right?
Yes, exactly. The pattern there. And once again, if you think about just boundaries in particular, limits, what you will allow and where you cross the line. And so if there's something that feels like it's being crossed, even in a subtle way, that might be, a sign or a signal that some communication maybe is needed in order to kind of clarify what's going on with that dynamic.
Awesome. Our students are also wondering, how can I make healthy relationships at work?
Okay, well, that's a good question. Well, first off, I go back to thinking about the characteristics of healthy relationships, right? Some of those ingredients. So, to circle back, thinking about communication. Okay, so how can I would ask that student, how can you have or create healthy, effective communication with your colleagues, with your coworkers, or whoever it is that you're wanting to target? Okay, so in order to have healthier relationships at work, kind of taking a moment to kind of take an appraisal and examine what your communication looks like, and is it as effective as it could be. As one, I'm just kind of giving one example of effective communication. Sounds like using your I statements. If there's something that you're wanting to point out, maybe a problem or a conflict that you're trying to navigate, using those I statements or I feel statements is what they've also been called. Um, I feel, we can go with, I feel, upset when I, notice that that my lunch is gone from the fridge. I'm actually trying to think of examples depending on where you work. But the point is being able to um, point out the issue, point out what it is that has kind of caused the concern, and do so using those I statements. That way you're communicating how you're feeling. You're trying to kind of move towards connection. You're trying to help that person to understand, the impact that it's having on you in a way that is as appropriate and safe as possible. Okay, so I'm thinking about communication being key there. In addition to, once again, respecting boundaries, right? So you'll notice that those characteristics of healthy relationships, that includes work relationships. So having healthy boundaries and practicing those boundaries with your coworkers as well, and communicating that respect of boundaries. Okay, so once again, to answer that question, I would apply the same ingredients and I should have started by saying that, by the way, if let's be real, there are so many different types of relationships that we, you know, create and manage in our lives. You know, please know that these ingredients don't just they don't just apply to romantic relationships. We're talking about relationships with colleagues, as someone just asked about, or coworkers, family members, right? Friendships, you know, relationships with your professors too. Okay, so when we're talking about healthy relationships here and some of those key ingredients, just know that they can and do apply to a number of different, across the board. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. It sounds as though with these key ingredients, they're definitely the foundations of really any healthy relationship, is what it sounds to me. So going into that, when the foundations aren't there, one student asked, "I'm thinking about detaching from an unhealthy relationship, but where do I start?"
Oh, okay. Yes. So yes, I think that I definitely want to speak to the courage there that it takes, and acceptance that it takes to make the decision to detach from an unhealthy relationship, a toxic relationship, um, or an abusive relationship. So I would start by, first off, recognizing that there are resources. Okay, there are resources available. In other words, I would say to that student, you don't have to go through this process alone, the process of disconnecting from a toxic relationship. Um, just to name a few, for students that are um, students of A&M San Antonio, please be aware that not only do we have the Student Counseling Center um, as one option of emotional support, we also have a crime victims office. I'm sure by now, hopefully some of the people in our audience are aware of Officer Karen Tucker Engel at Oakley.
Oakley.
Oakley! Yes. Okay. So I'm just giving one additional resource um, that is available um, that can help with safety planning as needed. To give you the idea of what some of these resources can help with safety planning, helping to ensure that that you are able to kind of navigate in a way that is, you know, dignified, setting you up with resources, setting you up with other supportive connections. We also have, for our campus, Title IX as another resource that's available. Um, so to answer the question, um, I would encourage, yes, I would encourage that student to start by recognizing that there are resources, help is available, and these different entities are here to help guide you through that process, to help maybe soften some of the intensity that you might feel with trying to disconnect from an unhealthy relationship or an abusive relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Um,
Yeah, and that actually ties into our next question. One student asked, "My partner makes fun of me for studying too much. Is that abuse?"
My partner makes fun of me for studying too much. Is that abuse? Okay. So, not many people are aware of this type of abuse. But I do want to go ahead and put a name to it because I think that that's valuable. Um, I think what I'm finding, at least, is that individuals, there are certain abuses, certain types of abuse or violence that people are kind of more familiar with. Physical abuse, you know, or
Mhm.
using physical force, emotional abuse or verbal abuse, right? Name calling.
A lot of name calling, from what
Mm-hmm.
I understand.
Sexual abuse or violence, you know,
Hmm.
using force um, or coercion to, you know, initiate sexual um, uh, experiences unwanted without consent, which
Hmm.
I can get to that in a moment if we need to. So those are types of abuses or violence that I'm noticing that people are familiar with, but there actually is um, a type of abuse that's called academic abuse. Academic abuse, and this is according to the Center for Relationship Violence. So they've studied this. In other words, relation, excuse me, academic abuse actually it can be thought of actions that prevent someone from receiving an education or belittle someone for receiving an education. Okay, and this is one that I'm finding that not many people are aware of. So it can and oftentimes does include, um, um, it can and oftentimes does include making fun of someone for studying, um, belittling an individual for the grades that they make, but making fun or belittling the major, you know, the major that the person um, is has, you know, is trying to pursue. Some other examples include, um, I know one common example is like where an individual might insist on taking classes with that person, um, even if that individual, they have different majors. So, in other words, that person basically insists on taking classes and kind of being there um, with that individual, kind of in a more of a controlling, um, even if they don't have any type of degree that matches. So yes, I want to say that academic abuse does exist.
I'm not gonna lie, it's one of the first times that I've definitely heard that terms, and it's definitely not the explanation or definition that came to mind hearing academic abuse. Well, so that's very insightful.
Yes, yes, behaviors or actions that prevent someone from or belittle someone for receiving an education. Yes. It's
Yes.
important to, I'm glad someone asked that because it is important to be aware of the variety, the wide range and different types of abuse. It does go beyond um, the types that I think maybe people are more familiar with or that are more maybe explicit, such as physical or sexual. There's academic abuse. There's economic abuse, which has to do with controlling one's resources or financial assets, right? So there's different types, and I'm really glad that someone asked that question because I think that part of us, um, part of the challenge here is going to be um, staying aware, remaining aware of the different types of abuse. When it comes to violence prevention, awareness is really key.
Mm-hmm.
I can't stress that enough. So if something was said related to any of those types of abuses that we just talked about, then that resonated, then once again, I encourage that student um, to connect with resources.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. That is, and so informative. Um, that leads us into our next question. It's more of a self-reflective question. What's the difference between loving yourself and being self-absorbed? Like where does that line get crossed?
That's a very interesting question. Okay, what's the difference between loving yourself and being self-absorbed? Okay. Well, I know that we were wanting to talk about self-love and how that matters. So I heard a long time ago, and I don't know if anyone here has heard of this expression or the saying, but it's something like um, selfish means me only, and self-love means me too.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you've heard of that, Jackie, but selfish might imply me only, and self-love means me too. And what that means to me, and the reason why I bring it up is because when I think about, I guess, the label of self-absorbed versus self-love, I kind of think of self-love as me too. I think of, I am also, a priority. I'm also a priority. And so I'm going to treat myself as such. Okay. I'm going to, kind of allow myself to have the time or the space or the nurturance or the nourishment that I need in order to be the best version of myself. That's kind of what I think of as far as, those differences. That's a really interesting question, but I don't know if I answered it exactly, but that's kind of what I think of as like in a self-absorption is more potentially a me only.
Leo, don't be rude, sir. Sorry about that.
Oh no, please. I welcome dogs. Yes, yes, yes. Sorry, I'm trying not to get distracted because I love dogs. Okay, yes, but I think of self-absorption. Maybe one could think of it as me only, but self-love is more me too, and we're working ourselves into the rotation, so to speak, and we're allowing ourselves to be a priority, and that's okay, because when we make ourselves a priority, we can be more productive and reach our goals. Excuse me.
So in terms of like self-affirming statements, that would kind of look like the difference between I am the only one worthy versus I am also worthy.
Yes, yes. So notice how you're stepping into the picture. You're putting you're kind of allowing yourself to be in the list of priorities. You're working. I call it working myself into the rotation is what I call it. So as in, the rotation of responsibilities and obligations and all these things, you're taking you're kind of like taking an intentional position in there, and yes, recognizing that you are worthy of that for sure.
That is awesome. What can be done is our next question to help encourage communication about sex, especially between partners.
Sexual communication. Okay. Yes, these are some really rich heartbeats that we're talking about today. So, well, this is good. I want to go back to what we were talking about with consent when I said that earlier, to make sure, because I don't want to just gloss over that. That's really important when we were talking before about sexual abuse. So consent, you can kind of think of consent as insummation. There's so much that I can say about consent. It's permission. Consent is permission. Consent is respect. Clear and enthusiastic agreement to engage in sexual activities or just to engage, really. Some people, I've even gone as far as consent for hand holding, holding hands, hugs, you know. But yes, clear and enthusiastic permission by all parties, all that are involved, and throughout the entire activity.
So consent is ongoing and continuous,
Yes.
is what I'm hearing. It can have a limitation and it can go backwards.
Yes. That's very important. Beginning, middle, end, and everything along the way. It can go back. In other words, maybe consent was there at first, you know, when the activity or um, activity first started, but maybe it changed. I'm really wanting to communicate that consent. There's a fluidity to it. It can go back, and that's okay. That we have to allow that. That's okay.
Mm-hmm.
We as individuals, we have a right to change our mind. Um, I really can't stress that enough, because I think that if we were able to kind of change the narrative and shift our culture to be more embracing of that, like to embrace the fact that, okay, people can change their mind, consent is voluntary, it's ongoing, right? Can you imagine the type of world that we might start to see if consent and that type of permission and flexibility were honored rather.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking of scenarios in which individuals are in a relationship and they forget that consent is still needed, and that now consent is being owed to the partner, but that's not necessarily true. Well, and this is in all stages of the relationship, dating to engagement to marriage and so far and so forth, and anywhere in between those stages. I'm thinking also in friendship as well.
Yes.
If there's no romantic relationship, but it's a friendship with different types of limitations, those can be given and taken back at any time.
Mm-hmm. Yes, essentially, the reason why we say consent is respect is because it is, you know, again, going back to those boundaries that we talked about, being able um, to hear and accept uh, another person's limitations. You're hearing it, you're validating it, and you're responding to it. Okay, so I want to make sure to also circle back to the question. It was about specifically sexual
encouraging communication about sex between partners.
Okay, yes. So sexual communication, I think the first part of encouraging it is to, like, honor it and kind of like get away from this idea of it being cheesy, or, oh man, I've heard a lot of um, messages about sexual communication. It takes away from the.
Oh, it's the turn off. It's
Yeah.
distracting. It's embarrassing.
Yes, and some people, yes, being embarrassed. Um, but yes, it almost like it's something that takes away from the experience, or that it somehow jeopardizes the intimacy. We must get to a place where sexual communication, that we recognize it's not taking away, it actually adds to the relationship. It adds to intimacy. Um, you know, it's so interesting how some of these messages kind of are perpetuated through, through music or pop culture. I saw a movie the other day that, involved someone who had been intimate with someone else, and she wanted to, like, contact him afterwards. And her friend was like, oh, no, you don't want to do that. You don't want to.
There's a waiting period that you want to do. I've seen those scenes.
Yeah.
If
So
you
this
contact
is a
them
movie.
too soon, or you're the first one to contact, then you're being clingy.
Yes,
Or,
oh my gosh. And so you can imagine me, watching this movie like, no, actually, communication is key here. So my point is, it makes sense that we have these thoughts or these assumptions about sexual communication, given just what the culture kind of, some of the messages that maybe the culture, again, perpetuates or even, teaches us. But I think, once again, we must shift the culture, change the narrative, and for partners or individuals, whoever is engaging in intimate sexual activity, to realize that communication is key. Communication actually is, it doesn't dampen intimacy, it boosts intimacy, and it has the power to, to be something that really helps create more alignment, more connection, and again, respect, more transparency, right? So I think it's almost like shifting the culture to not have sexual communication be cheesy, but have sexual communication be like awesome and sexy. And, I think that in itself will could potentially help.
absolutely.
With,
I know that there have been a few platforms, different platforms have been encouraging communication and consent and the continuity of standing your ground on something that you believe in, and like the use of contraceptives or limitations in what you want to engage in, and standing firm by those. So this was a very powerful question.
Very much. That's a strong heartbeat right there. I appreciate whoever posed that. I hope that was clarifying.
We do have another very powerful heartbeat in this next question. I've gone through a lot in life, but I'm slowly turning things around. How can I learn to love myself more moving forward?
Okay. Yes, gone through a lot in life, and I'm slowly turning things around. So we first want to start by really let's acknowledge that for the individual who came up with that question. We want to acknowledge the different seasons that you've gone through. It sounds like you've gone through some seasons that were more turbulent than others. And I think the first part of learning to love yourself moving forward is to acknowledge those seasons and your growth, your progression through them. I think that part of self-love also involves really being able to take a moment and reflect and appreciate yourself. Reflect on and appreciate those characteristics about you, your strengths, right? Your strengths. Reflect on and appreciate. Oh, looks like Jackie might have. I'm sure she'll be back. But yes, I want to make sure to answer this question while we still have time. To reflect and appreciate your strengths, your talents, your gifts, right? Part of self-love, I think, is taking that time to really be compassionate to yourself rather than critical of yourself. That's going to be key too. I think self-criticism is kind of what I think we maybe were used to thinking, that self-criticism kept us in line, and by being critical of ourselves, we were motivating ourselves. That's how I get motivated. But what research actually has shown is that self-criticism does not motivate as much as self-compassion, being kind to yourself, being gentle with yourself as needed. being respectful of yourself. So for that individual that spoke about going through a lot, turning things around, right? So we want to honor that, what you went through, those seasons, your resiliency, and being able to turn things around. But then taking it a step further is going to look like kind of continuing, continuing the narrative, continuing that process of appreciating yourself and realizing your own power. I think that is also really important here. Part of self-love, I think, is being able to, you know, recognize the power that you have and that you possess. And, in time, being able to really connect with that magic that you have, because clearly you have it. If you've gone through those seasons and now you're turning things around, clearly you have power. I think that self-love is just a matter, not just, but part of the process of loving ourselves involves owning that power and learning how to harness it, moving forward. I hope that kind of helps to answer that question for the individual that spoke about some hardship and how they're learning slowly to love themselves. All right. Well, I see. I think that we actually are getting towards the end of the hour here, and I want to make sure that we have time just to kind of wrap up because I really want to thank everyone. Thank you for your heartbeats. The discussions today, ranging from the characteristics of healthy relationships, boundaries, and what that means. Looks like there's a question that's coming through, but I'm not sure if we're going to have time to answer that. I don't want to rush through someone's heartbeat. And so I'm going to hold on that for now, so that way we can kind of come to a close. But thank you for posing that question. You are more than welcome to direct message us, if we can help with that final question that came through that we just didn't have time to get to. Because again, I don't want to rush through these heartbeats. There were a lot of really rich questions that were posed. Healthy relationships, boundaries, sexual communication, yes. Abuse, making sure to be aware of those resources, reaching out for help. Just so much that was covered in a short amount of time. So once again, if there was anything that resonated with you, we do invite you to, reach out, and for students, A&M San Antonio students, please don't hesitate to contact the Student Counseling Center to see how we can be of support and how we can serve you. Okay. I want to, as we come to a close, wish everyone a healthy Valentine's Day. Again, no matter what your Valentine's Day looks like, no matter how you're spending it, please just know that there is a lot of power that can come from having a healthy perspective on relationships and on self-love. And hello, I'm seeing Miguel. Hi to you too. I don't want to just ignore you. I see that you're here. We just wrapped up our heartbeats discussion. We were talking today about healthy relationships and self-love as we all gear up for Valentine's Day this weekend. So if you just tuned in, no worries. Please know that this a recording of this will be available on our Instagram page. Okay, so give it some time to process, and you can always watch it later if you want to kind of see what were some of the things that were discussed today related to healthy relationships, communication, boundaries, consent, sex, sexual communication, that is, and self-love. Self-love. Really, yes, to answer, I'm seeing some questions come through. This will be saved. So please take some time to circle back to this, in your time of self-reflection. Take some time to circle back to this. It will be available. And thank you for the love. I'm seeing so much love come through. Y'all are just being so good to me. Thank you for the love. Again, wishing you all a healthy Valentine's Day. And again, that last question was very powerful. Remember, self-love, it means me too. I hope that you all will work yourselves into the rotation and make yourself a priority this weekend. Okay, so thank you. Take care. Stay safe. And bye-bye. Oh, hi, Jackie. Okay, so I just concluded. So since we're still recording, if Jackie, thank you for being, I'm going to circle back to make sure I can give Jackie props. Thank you for being here to field those questions and just to moderate and helping with those heartbeats. We have concluded, but if there's anything you'd like to say before I officially exit off, I did tell the viewers that this will be saved, and so they can go back and view it later if they miss anything. So
yeah, of course. The only reminder that I have is that to remember that our student counseling services are available for any consultations or questions. If y'all want to send us an email or even call us, to 210-784-1331. And we are always available to take incoming calls and questions.
Excellent. Okay. Well, thank you all again, and have a healthy Valentine's Day. Bye-bye.